Turn down service. They train you to make the bed like you are ironing the ocean. No ripples, no memory of who tossed and turned before. Tug the corners, pat the quilt, seal the pillowcase like a letter you intend to deliver. Coating more. It matters in Window 12. The room is a small cathedral of orange hardware, tangled cabling, labeled toggles. The circular viewport is the altar. Through it, the earth leans into the glass, blue and bright, Europe lit like spilled gold leaf. People rent this cabin to cry or to propose or to look for ghost cities from textbooks that vanished after a rewrite. They do not call it a spaceship. They call it a place to get an answer. I am housekeeping. I orbit, I sweep, I make the bed. The quilt is the important part. It looks like a normal comforter, the kind you would throw over your legs while watching a movie. Inside it, the weave holds chilled motes that do not play by the usual rules of matter. The motes are patient and a little nosy. When someone lies on the quilt and looks through the round window, the bed asks a question you can hear only with your bones. Which world is yours, really? You think the window is for looking out. It is for choosing. Guests are told not to bring strong magnetic fields, not to drink, not to stare too long if their heart has arrhythmia. They are not told about the choosing. If you say it out loud, people try to land on a perfect world, and that is how you peel a mind. So, we have rules. The first rule is this. When a guest leaves, the bed must forget them. You smooth away their imprint before the next person arrives. You do it with heat and time and your quiet wish that you never hear a scream echo through the ducting. During my first month, I rushed. I was late for a shift change. I left the lower corner creased. After that orbit, my brother became left-handed in every memory that involved pens. I could remember both versions of the notes he left me in high school, the old ones and the new ones, and my skull felt like a drawer jammed with duplicate keys. I keep a little book in my pocket now. Each morning the book tells me whether I had a dog when I was 12, whether the capital of Italy is Rome with a cathedral or Rome with a stadium, whether I hate pickles or crave them with eggs. The book makes me calm. If the details shift, I breathe and fold the quilt and write a new line. People on the ground are not bothered by such things. People in orbit learn to staple themselves to reality. On my second year working Window 12, a guest arrived with an old-fashioned metal lunchbox. Her name badge read Dr. Imani Osei. She moved like a person who always knows where gravity is. The booking sheet said she had the room for one orbit. She tipped me in stories. My father carved boat oars but never rowed, she said, since some people are too nervous to be silent. He gave them away. When he died, I found his first oar up in the rafters, not varnished, rough in the hands. He kept the imperfect one. Imagine living like that, giving the world your best and keeping the draft. She set her lunchbox on the suitcase shelf and looked at my hands. Do the motes ever ask you to keep something? They ask all the time, I said, because it was true and also because I liked her voice. I tell them I just make the bed. She laughed, and then she stopped. The orbit brought the night side of Earth to the glass. The lights came on. Borders I would never cross flared like delicate scars. Dr. Osei lay down on Dar. I stood with my back to the door and watched my own reflection float among the stars. Each person focuses on something. Some latch onto a coastline, some onto a single apartment tower, some watch for a plane and hope it lands this time, even if they do not know where or why. Dr. Osei watched a small, blinking cluster in the North Atlantic that only ship people and weather people ever notice. She whispered a string of numbers as if she were counting a choir in. Her eyes watered. She did not blink. The quilt warmed. The motes began to take her measure. The strain gauge near the window ticked toward the red. That happens when a person tries to drag a big answer through the porthole. I put my hand on the back of the chair to keep from telling her to pick something smaller. You hope for, I was wrong about the keys, and you fear, I was wrong about time. After a while she breathed. One slow entry into a new life, and the gauge settled. She did not scream. Good. Time Lao. When her orbit ended, she left the lunchbox on the shelf. Inside, wrapped in tissue, was an oar handle the size of a hammer grip, worn smooth where a hand had taught itself a circle. She had carved a piece of something rough and brought it to space, then gone home without it. My little book said I had never owned a dog. It also said there was a museum in Accra that had opened 5 years earlier, one I would have remembered from before. On the walk back to the service module, I met a crewman I had never met who knew my nickname. My heart made a small change in the way it beat, not faster but off from its own rhythm by a finger width. Trivial things, shifts in the quilt. After shift end, I went back to window 12 with fresh sheets. The earth was a dish of cold blue light. The bed was an invitation. I set the stack of towels on the chair and watched my face in the glass. It looked like me, but it also looked like the me who called my mother every Sunday. I did not call her in the world I remembered. She died before we learned to be kind. I am not paid to do this. I do not even have the access code. But the room knows me. I smoothed the quilt once, then another time, then another until the stitching lined up with the seam that runs to the floor. I lay down the way you lie down on a confession. Which world is yours, really? From this altitude, the questions are clean. A line of lights is only a line of lights, not a memory of a fight you could not unpick, or the taste of a meal you never got to cook. Somewhere under the window, new snow glittered in Poland. A plane arced from Dublin to somewhere warmer. The moon sat like a lost button between the window and the stars. I thought of the oar handle. I thought of my own drafts. The me who never worked in orbit. The me who had a dog. The me who picked smaller people to love. I could have tried to pull a cathedral through. I could have tried to resurrect a woman and pay for it with a lifetime of splinters in the mind. The bed would have let me try. It does not judge. It only registers weight. Instead, I picked something I could carry. I watched until the line of dawn slid over the Sahara and lifted the room into day. I watched until I could name 3 cities in 3 languages and still remember which name belonged to which river. I watched until my heartbeat drew even with the ticking relay over the door. Then I decided to be the version of myself who calls my mother while she is alive in any world where that can be true. The gauge sighed. The quilt cooled. The motes settled like dust after a quiet argument. In the morning shift briefing, the lead asked if anyone had seen a metal lunchbox left in window 12. I raised my hand. She asked if anyone could cover third orbit because Luca had a migraine. I raised my hand again. My little book had a new line. When I was 12, I never had a dog, but I did find a stray. I fed her for a week and then got caught. That felt real. The mouth of the memory was warm. I went back to make the bed. I ironed the ocean. I tucked the corner tight. I left a single deliberate ripple near the foot of the quilt. A tiny draft kept for myself, not perfect, not loud. People would come to choose, and the bed would ask them questions in a language with no verbs. They would pull what they could through the window. The world would tilt by a hair. From the pillow, if you lie just right, the curve of earth matches the curve of the stitch blanket. If you do not tell anyone, sometimes you can believe you are making the whole planet comfortable for sleep.